Hello. Today I'll be presenting Chapter 4 of Edgar Schein's book, Humble Consulting. In Chapter 4, Edgar Schein talks about how humble consulting begins with the first conversation. The author talks about how building a relationship begins at the initial point of contact with the client. Essentially, your initial response can build a relationship and immediately be helpful to the client by helping them establish what needs to be done to immediately initiate change. Schein also talks about how, as a consultant, you must go into the meeting with the client with attitudinal preparations. Here, you must bring a sense of commitment, curiosity, and caring. You must be emotionally ready to help and be empathetic to the client's need. You must also go into the meeting with an open mind. Schein talks about how, as a consultant, you can't have any type of preconceived notions about the client or any kind of implicit bias that may hinder your approach to helping the client with their respective needs. Schein also talks about how to listen and different listening styles. He talks about the first being self-oriented listening. In this instance, you're asking the client questions that basically help the consultant understand if this particular issue connects to the respective skills and experience. There's also content empathetic listening. You're paying attention to the issue presented by the client. In-person empathetic issues focus on how the person is feeling about their respective situation. You're basically asking the client how they feel about the situation at hand and eliciting an emotional response from them. Schein also talks about how to respond to the client. He talks about the humble consulting process having different steps. Step 1 being humble inquiry with the client, where as a consultant you remain committed to being helpful. The questions you should be asking the client should be open-ended. Schein also talks about diagnostic inquiry. You're asking the client, why did that happen? Which is designed to allow the consultant and client to understand the issue together. Basically to form a mutual understanding of the issue at hand and how they both perceive it. He talks about 3 types of diagnostic questions. Conceptual, being the why question. The emotional, where you're asking the client how they feel about the issue. And behavioral, what did you do? Asking the client, what steps did you take or what behaviors did you take to address the issue at hand? Schein also talks about circular questions and process focus. Circular questions are basically roundabout questions that are developed and kind of taken from psychology and therapy sessions. Here you want to consider possible consequences of what the client proposes. Utilize suggestive inquiries. Suggestive questions forces new content into the story. Basically here again you're trying to elicit suggestions from the client. Asking questions like, did that not make you feel angry? There's also process-oriented inquiries, where you redirect how the client formulates the issue and what they want the consultant to do to help them. Personal revelation. Schein talks about how the humble consulting attitude requires openness and authenticity. In order for you to really build a relationship with the client, they must trust you and really understand that you're authentic about your intentions and your relationship with them. He talks about case number 5, titled Whether to Develop a Culture Analysis Template. Here, basic help occurred in the first conversation in the case when curiosity and interest helped the client rethink what she was trying to do. Honest questions allowed the client in this case to be open. The approach led to digging out what the client needed. In case 6, creating a client through a process suggestion, the Alpha Power Company, the lessons learned by Schein in this respective case was that relationship building requires personal honesty. As a consultant, you must be prepared to shift roles as your needs and client needs change. Case 7 was the Massachusetts Audubon Board Task Force, a case of personalization success. Here, the lessons learned was that there was a cultivated trust among board members and communication with Norma, the head of the agency. The adaptive move here was to change the conversation to invite an emotional response from board members in order to improve trust between the board, the head, and the director, and also to improve communication and emotional response from board members. In Case A, the Cambridge at Home Committee of Personalization of Failure, Shine talks about he and a group of friends explore the concept of staying in their homes versus going into a nursing home. Lessons learned here was that Shine moved into a leadership role, and the group found this helpful. He also found that activity or behavior that is out of line with existing culture will not survive. Essentially, a new activity or behavior that's introduced that's not consistent with team or group norms will not survive in that respective environment. And the summary of Chapter 4, Humble Consulting, begins with the first conversation, is to build a level 2 relationship from the initial reaction. You must begin with commitment to help the client by fostering curiosity and caring for the client. Here, empathy is key. The client must see you as empathetic and authentic in order for you to trust you and build a long-term relationship. Do not be self-oriented in listening, as the client will not reveal their issues. Essentially, if you're just being listening from your own internal perspective, the client will sense this and not open up to you. Building a relationship begins at the initial contact with your tone of voice, your attitude toward the client. Again, in Chapter 4, Shine stresses that humble consulting really begins with authenticity and empathy towards the client.